about something, and we normally touch on very practical things in our YouTube clips. But I thought today, because of a situation that I saw bloom on Facebook, we could perhaps talk about something a little deeper and more philosophical about how homeschooling actually empowers moms to be moms again, to educate their children and not always second guess themselves. So why don't you jump in with some ideas about why you felt, and the same as I did, that we were actually taking back what was actually ours, and that is the education and the sort of shepherding and stewarding of our children's lives.
I think it's a great topic, Wendy, and I think one of the little catchphrases that we often say, and we have an article on our website about, which we can share later, is that moms are actually the best teachers. And as moms, we need to learn to trust ourselves and not always think that some third-party expert who's a professional can do a better job than we can. We know our children intimately. We've known them from birth. We know their development, how they reach their milestones, if there were any struggles, if there were any health issues, if they were fast learners or slow. And so we understand how they're wired, and that helps us to be able to customize their learning and help them to achieve their best potential. And we do it without labeling them. Well, we can label them if we want, but I mean, they don't need to suffer the negative consequences of negative labels, like they might in a school situation. So that's just one reason.
Yeah, and I was thinking back to when my first child was born, and I had an amazing pediatrician, and the one time I was like, am I overfeeding? Am I, not feeding enough? Am I, how often should I feed? And he just said, you've got to trust yourself as a mom. And that stuck with me through all the years, is just trust that inner mom heart with your children. We all know that it is right for us to feed our children and read books to them and take them on, fun outings and park days and all that sort of thing. So why, when they kind of get to 7, do we all of a sudden throw up our hands in dismay and say, I can't do this? It has to be done by the educational professionals. I believe in many ways that parents have been disempowered to take up this amazing role of home educating their children. It's something that used to always be done. It was normal. The children would receive instruction in their home, and then in their early teen years, they would either move on to sort of more in-depth ways of running a household if they were a woman. The young boys would be apprenticed to their father, if there wasn't a father, to somebody else in the village. And life was, that was life. We learned from adults and from a community of people. And then all of a sudden, in the Industrial Revolution, we had kids having to be put into schools for babysitting. It was a babysitting service at the time.
Yeah, separated in batches according to date of birth, as Ken Robertson puts it so cleverly.
We've just lost that natural flow of life by shipping our kids off to an institution to be educated. So if a mom is in that position where she's now second guessing her ability to do this, what advice would you give her in her early stages?
I just think it's like, how do you need to make sure that your child is making progress. And it's like the advice that somebody shared with me when a mom with a baby, like you were, says to, like, how do I know if my child's getting enough food? The advice is, look at the child. Is the child happy? Is the child healthy? Is it growing? Are there enough nappies getting changed per day? And you kind of have this gut feeling if your child is off or listless and not feeling well. And the same with an older child. You can tell if your child's got a fever or just feeling a bit flat and not got energy, and if there's something wrong. And then you decide what to do. You either decide to put them in bed for the day, or you give them some self-medication, or you'll go to the pharmacy and get them something. And if something's really wrong, then you'll decide to go and get professional help. And it's the same with home education. You can look at your child and say, is my child learning? Are they enthusiastic about what we're doing? Can we tweak what we're doing if they're not enthusiastic? Are they making progress? And as long as they're making progress, that's good, because each child is an individual. So the ones who are slow need to go slow, and the ones who learn fast can go fast. And as long as they're moving, that's fine. But when they hit a roadblock, that's when a mom sometimes gets a little bit unsure. And some temporary roadblocks, let's call them, are part of children's way of learning when they're just consolidating something. But then there should be progress within a month or two. But if they're always struggling with something, then maybe you're going to need to ask somebody else for advice. And it needn't be a professional. You might first ask another homeschool mom, or somebody who's strong in that subject, or, you know, there are different things you can do. And if something's really wrong, then like with a really sick child, then yes, get remedial therapy or expert help from a professional. But for the day-to-day things, we always ask, am I doing enough? Are my children learning? And we have to just learn to get comfortable with those questions, because we are self-evaluating, and that's a good thing. But don't get hung up on them and condemn yourself because your child's learning looks different to the school or somebody else's child, or even your own goals and expectations. Maybe the reality is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think it's a lovely analogy, you know, looking at the physical health of the child to the emotional and educational health of the child. And I think the one word that's coming to mind is thriving. Is my child thriving? If they're not thriving, then it means that there does need to be a tweaking or a change or advice sought. So that's a good way. And I think that the more we learn to do these little things and trust ourselves, even when we make the decision to buy the right program for our family, we've done our research, etc., all of a sudden we feel a little bit more confident with our choices. That means that maybe a year down the line, you are confident to actually make another good choice for them. And that is an empowering position to be in as a parent. Yeah, that's...
And it gets better. I always say the first year is the worst year. And that's not because it's so bad, but it's because you're so insecure. And after that, you get more confident. You've got some experience and you can change what you want to change. And as you go, it just gets better and better in most cases.
Absolutely. And, you know, there are some folks that often ask, well, how do I know my child is achieving the right milestones or educational measures? And while we are both great proponents for saying each child develops at their own pace, there are two books. In fact, the one book that I will recommend every day is Ruth Beechick's book, You Can Teach Your Children Successfully. And she does give you scope and sequence, but the lovely thing about her balance in this is that each child is on their own timeline. But these are the basic skills that you need to have to read, to write, to do maths. These are your interest areas that you want to develop in your children, their history, their geography, their sciences, that sort of thing. And to hold that kind of book loosely is important. You know, if we grab onto that and say, my child has to conform to this, we again then doing the same thing over again, trusting somebody else for our child's personal timeline. So that's a great book. And I wanted to read a quote by a woman, Vicky Ferris. We've got it on our website under our preschool ideas, where we talk about living life alongside our preschoolers, because right in that place it starts. Can we trust ourselves enough with our little guys so that we know that they are learning just by being alongside us? And Vicky Ferris has 10 kids, and her husband was very, very involved in the setting up of the Legal Defense Fund in the States. So they are long-term homeschoolers. And she says in the quote that I'm reading, I doubt that the ancient Hebrew mother who taught her children as she baked bread, swept the house, and beat out the rugs, had any notion that her people would still be living 2,000 years later. Neither is it easy for us, as we teach our kids phonics and feed them peanut butter sandwiches, to see just what God can do through our faithfulness. I firmly believe that through us, God can touch future generations in mighty ways. And I just thought that's such a lovely quote, because what happens is that we often get very bogged down in the nitty-gritty of little children, big children, phonics, maths, varsity choices. But if we just remember that we're raising a generation, we're raising adults, not children, we can keep on doing those little bits every day. Anything else you'd like to add before we end off?
Yeah, I think an important thing is just to realize that you're the mom of your kids, and you have gifts and strengths that you are imparting to them, and they've been placed in your family. And so just trust yourself. You have something of value to sow into your children's lives, and you're the best person to do it.
Oh, that's
basically
lovely. Yeah.
You're the best.
That's wonderful. Lovely chatting, Shirley. We'll chat again.